She's a little strong. We're friends, like Gary Butler and one of them to be.
What's it look like? There's one on the floor, there's one on the table.
Thank you so much.
There was one sitting in a chair somewhere. Where? I'm trying to remember. I don't know. Did you leave?
Thank you for coming tonight. This is a great cause, and we've got a wonderful film, and we've got many doctors here in the audience. And I just want to introduce Dr. Bill Osmond. He's a cosmetic, general family, and cosmetic dentist with a master's degree in public health with practices in Canada and the United States. This is Dr. Bill.
Okay, I don't really have too much on the agenda other than I wanted to watch the film and then maybe answer questions, and we can get together and maybe in smaller groups of who we like to work with on different projects. Some of us may want to do fundraising, some of us may want to do brochures going out to houses, some are working more in passing it out at different locations. I think, what was it? McDonald's was a place that you were using on.
Oh, I'm out on the highway with a sign getting tremendous amount of positive response.
So there's all kinds of different methods that we can use. The movie says things better than I can, except that I want to make one couple comments. One was, we had a great meeting with the Port Angeles Business Associations. They were very receptive, very kind, very nice, lots of good questions, a lot of comments afterwards. We talked. City Hall, I think there have been some great presentations by all of you in short segments. I'm not too concerned. I think that there's going to be a good vote. I think we're going to have a positive, as long as we all get out and work hard, because there's a lot of people who aren't getting the message, and we're up against a very strong, moneyed group of people. I think we can win. I'm optimistic, but we're going to have to work to do it. We're not going to just roll into our laps. One of the things that is very important to me is the concept of freedom. Fluoride is the only chemical medicine that we're given that is non-food, that is given to us without our consent. And I think because there's so many sources of fluoride, if a person wants it, they can have it. So the strongest point I think I was given earlier was freedom, freedom of choice. We need to give that to our neighbors. I know I'm kind of singing to the choir, but we need to emphasize that frequently. We want our freedom. Just last night late, there are a group of us who are working on the National Toxicology Program, or Office of Health Assessment and Translation. Some big things happening on the national level on fluoride. I have no doubt that in time this thing's going to stop. You just can't continue this nonsense of giving people fluoride in water. It's just stupid. And they're finally, after, it's been a little bit of, you know, the little boy was watching the sheep and he called wolf, wolf, because he got a nice reaction from people. Well, there wasn't enough science earlier, and there was the wolf, wolf call. Pretty soon everybody turned off those wolf, wolf wackos and just said, it's safe and effective, and this is it. We're not going to allow it. However, the research now has really switched, because we've gotten a lot of research from foreign countries, China, India, Iran, and it's all showing a serious problem with the brain, thyroid, all these kinds of things. So what I did is I filed 3 requests that the National Toxicology Program review fluoride because of cancer. And they contacted me and they said, we want you to request a review on developmental neurotoxicology, the toxic effects to children. Now this is the federal government saying, we want you to request this so we have an excuse to look at it. And of course they'd slowly been looking at it before, So what happened is, I sent one on thyroid instead. This is over 100 references on each one. Over 100 pages. I mean, just, well, 70 pages in one. Huge, huge amount of data. And she called me up, the co-director at NDP, and said, Bill, are you still doing one on neurotoxicology? I said, yes, it's coming. So I sent that, and they've accepted that one to review. The other two, they're going to kind of combine thyroid and the brain development, because thyroid affects how the IQ and how it develops, so they're going to kind of combine that. And hopefully they're going to look at the cancer one, but they are really interested in what is causing the brain. Yeah?
Can you say again who they is?
National Toxicology Program. To be candid with you, I didn't really know much about them until about 9 months ago. And there's so many different government agencies, and I work with the EPA, and the FDA, and the CDC, and the Health and Human Services, and all these, and it's kind of like deaf ears, constantly deaf ears. National Toxicology Program did one on the brain about 25 years ago. Yeah.
Is that the same as NTC or the NTP?
National Toxicology Program, NTP.
Okay, because NTC has really been involved. I just I'm sorry.
Okay. Anyway, so they are looking at it. They've accepted it. Yesterday was the last day for some public comment. They sent me information first so I could review their question of what they're going to be asking. They've also sent this all to all their partners. In other words, all the different government agencies saying, we're wanting to look at this fluoride and the brain. Huge. And they've all got an agreement with FDA, CDC, EPA, all of them are on board. They're going to be looking at this fluoride. One of the things that they're doing is they also ask for names of scientists that we recommend, and we've done that. Of course, Conitz at FAN are doing a whole lot of work and working on this also, getting names of people, getting input. Most of the time when they do a review of fluoride, it's specifically on one little aspect of it, and then they get their friends to join in and review it with them. And then they say, we're only going to look at the English studies. We're going to look at them for the last 10 years. We're going to only look at, we're not going to use in vivo, in vitro. We're not going to use animal studies. We're not going to use, as they can get so many things out of the way and say, wow, there really aren't any studies showing that people are losing their brains from fluoride. I mean, well, we don't do that. That would be an unethical study. And so they're asking you, me, to provide them with studies that are unethical. So the National Toxicology Program is so much beyond that. And they're looking at all the studies, foreign languages, animals. One of the big ones that they want is the mechanism of how fluoride causes brain damage. And there's a recent one that just came on out, just an abstract so far. It's kind of like a poster project that was brought out, and it's supposed to be in the publishing pipeline at this point. And it is showing how the first trimester of pregnancy is where we have some of our worst problems. This is where that little two cells are getting together, and a little bit of fluoride can cause a big damage. The first study I've seen on something like that. It's just so much, it's really, really exciting. But remember, if they stop fluoridation nationwide, what would we do? We wouldn't have a project. I would hope that they stop it. Anyway, so there's lots of great things on the federal level happening. This is a key factor, because Dr. Locke has got his job on the line to a certain extent. This is his reputation here in Port Angeles. He got this in, he got money for it, he's pushed it, he's promoted it. This is, his self-worth is on the line. And if it were stopped, it would hurt him personally.
And he's a chairman of Delta Dental, which is a
Conflict
of interest.
That's the Delta Dental Foundation, which is kind of their charitable arm of Delta Dental. And so, but this is huge here in Port Angeles. So I appreciate what you're doing. This film was one that was just done recently. There are others, and afterwards we'll do some questions, but there are other films that are also good. This one's a little bit longer. They are talking about doing it more like a feature-length movie, so this is the first step on it. Anyway, if we can get some lights, let's watch a movie here, see if we can get it to play. Play.
No. Oh, okay.
Play.
Oh my gosh, it's dark in here.
Maybe not the lights yet.
What do we do here on play?
Okay, turn it back on so you can see the play.
I don't know.
So, right here.
Who's the expert? Oh, it's down in here? There we
There
go.
we go.
That worked.
Got it?
Yeah.
Sound okay?
According to the Centers for Disease Control, fluoridation is one of the top 10 public health achievements of the 20th century. It began in 1945 because we believed that ingesting fluoride strengthened the developing teeth, making them resistant to cavities. Almost 70 years after the first cities were fluoridated, over 90% of Americans still suffer from tooth decay, and we now know that fluoride is not a silver bullet. Recently, the Environmental Protection Agency added fluoride to its list of developmental neurotoxins, chemicals that interfere with normal brain development in utero and in children. And the EPA-commissioned National Research Council has determined fluoride to be an endocrine disruptor, causing the most severe harm to our thyroid gland. So whether or not fluoride in our water is benefiting our teeth, the time has come to rethink this very old practice.
7 years ago, something happened in this town. Something very simple happened. 7 years ago, something was added to this water, added to this town's drinking water. It did something to the teeth, or poison, and the children's teeth just don't have as many cavities anymore. And here's how it happened.
Fluorine is the most reactive element on the planet, and because of this unique property, fluoride quickly assumed a major role in the growing chemical industry of the mid-20th century, in the manufacturing of aluminum for giants like Alcoa, steel for corporations like U.S. Steel, fluorocarbons for refrigerants, and Teflon for DuPont. But fluoride's most significant role was in uranium enrichment during the race to develop the atomic bomb during World War II, and the many thousands of bombs that would follow. Just months before the Second World War ended, 107 barrels of sodium fluoride were delivered to Grand Rapids, Michigan, and it made history as the first city to add fluoride into its public water supply.
There really was not ever a good study that clearly demonstrated safety and effectiveness.
Dr. Kathleen Thiessen is one of the top scientific experts in the world on fluoride. She served as one of 12 committee members for the National Research Council's Scientific Review of Fluoride in 2006.
There were several things suspected in the 1940s and early 50s that they knew about, they ignored. They said, we're not going to talk about it, nobody discussed this out loud. We're just not going to pursue these things.
Dr. Harold Hodge, a distinguished toxicologist on the Rochester team, has carefully investigated the safety of fluoridation.
Well, to put it very simply, fluoride is safe at 1 part per million. Oh, we sometimes say, is fluoride poison? Yes, of course it's a poison. In large doses.
We used to think about poisons in terms of dose, but now we also think about them in terms of the timing of exposure. So even a little bit of the poison at a critical time in a child's development can have lifelong negative impacts on that child's brain.
The evidence simply does not support the benefit of water fluoridation. It does support, or at least suggest, the likelihood of a number of adverse health effects, and at the very least we need to be taking a good look at it. We can't simply say the science has been settled for 70 years, don't look at it anymore. That's a cop-out.
But entrenched beliefs persist. Like a recent email from senior science correspondent Donald McNeil of the New York Times. I understand that you disagree, but I think it's fair to say that most members of the science staff of the New York Times consider this debate to have been decided in fluoride's favor about 50 years ago. Right about the time Marilyn Monroe's career was taking off in 1951, water fluoridation became an official policy of the U.S. Public Health Service. Over the next 60 years, 75% of our tap water would be artificially fluoridated, with children singing the praises of this new wonder drug treatment, the answer to tooth decay. Fluoride spread from drinking water to the multitude of processed beverages and foods containing water. From soups to juices to beer to our morning coffee, currently more than 210 million Americans are dosed daily with fluoride, making it the most widely distributed drug in the country.
Fluoride added to water is a drug. If you look at any definition of a drug is a substance that is used to prevent disease. And the only reason, the very reason, it's added to water is to prevent the disease of dental decay.
It's an uncontrolled dosage. Nobody knows exactly how much any individual is getting. Nobody's checking to see if it's working for that individual or if there are any side effects for that individual. So it goes against everything we have now about informed consent.
That should concern us all, because informed consent is a fundamental tenet of ethical medical practice. At times, fluoride is compared to vitamin D or folic acid, but in actuality, that comparison is completely wrong. Vitamin D and folic acids are vitamins or nutrients that we need to be healthy, and without them, we would be sick or even die. But without fluoride, we would be perfectly healthy.
We have a moral obligation and responsibility to assure that all people have the right to what it is that they're putting into their bodies.
The Supreme Court has held that all Americans have a fundamental right to refuse medical treatment. This is part of our basic liberties guaranteed to all of us pursuant to the 14th Amendment.
But refusing medical treatment in the case of fluoride is extremely difficult because ordinary household filters do not remove fluoride, and it's also in almost every beverage or soup containing water. You would literally have to stop going out to opt out of this drug. Hexafluorosilicic acid, or HFSA for short, is the fluoride chemical added to our water. It comes from the smokestacks of the phosphate industry, captured by what are called wet scrubbers put in place under the Clean Air Act to remove fluorine gas and other pollutants. This HFSA slurry is not pure, containing trace amounts of arsenic, mercury, cadmium, thallium, radionuclides, and lead. An industrial waste byproduct turned public health benefit was welcomed by the EPA's Rebecca Hamner. In a letter from 1983, she wrote, "In regard to the use of fluorosilicic acid as a source of fluoride for fluoridation, this agency regards such use as an ideal environmental solution to a long-standing problem. By recovering byproduct fluorosilicic acid from fertilizer manufacturing, water and air pollution are minimized, and water utilities have a low-cost source of fluoride available to them."
So why would we ever add a chemical that contains those neurotoxins as part of getting fluoride in the water, which is a neurotoxin in itself?
Most of the neurotoxic substances and carcinogenic substances are considered to not have a threshold, meaning that there's no level below which they're safe.
Fluoride definitely crosses the placenta. So in actuality, the dose for a fetus that is safe in terms of a neurotoxin is 0. But if a pregnant woman is drinking fluoridated tap water, she's exposing her fetus to quite a bit of fluoride, certainly an amount that's above what we know to be safe for the child's developing brain.
We have a scarred history with chemicals and drugs once thought to be safe, like asbestos and Vioxx. And known toxins like lead were widely used in gasoline, paint, and water pipes. In 1925, we thought 100 parts per billion of lead was safe to drink. In 88, it was 50, then 15. Arsenic is the same. 50 parts per billion used to be safe, then a dramatic drop to 10. In 1962, the Department of Health and Human Services recommended a maximum of 1.2 milligrams of fluoride per liter of water, but in 2015 it dropped to 0.7, a 40% reduction in what was deemed safe for the last 55 years. The current EPA goal for arsenic and lead is 0. Will fluoride follow suit as we come to grips with recent science?
It took decades to get lead out of gasoline and lead out of paint, even though we knew that lead posed substantial risks to the brain. It still took decades to get it out, and the industries that were invested in lead fought tooth and nail.
Based on modern science, most countries have discontinued or never begun water fluoridation. In fact, 97% of Western European countries do not fluoridate their water, a significant fact in light of data collected by the World Health Organization. In the United States, there was a steady decline in tooth decay from the 1970s up to 2010, and credit is given to fluoridation. So what about non-fluoridated countries, represented here by NF? Curiously enough, country after country without fluoridation has the exact same reduction in tooth decay. So what does fluoride in our drinking water really do?
We said in the NRC report that fluoride is an endocrine disruptor. It has an adverse effect on normal endocrine function. The normal function of the thyroid hormone doesn't happen, it's reduced.
The thyroid is a small butterfly-shaped gland in the neck, regulating our weight, fertility, optimal brain development, and our energy levels. Currently, 1 in 8 U.S. women will develop thyroid disease, and Synthroid, the drug used to treat hypothyroidism or low thyroid output, is the most commonly prescribed drug in the country, with 23 million Americans needing it to boost thyroid function. A study from the British Medical Journal in 2015 shows that patients in fluoridated communities are nearly twice as likely to have hypothyroidism, supporting the link between drinking fluoride and harm to our endocrine systems.
So if you are a woman who had thyroid disease, you wouldn't want to be ingesting fluoride. But if you have fluoridated tap water, you would not be able to avoid that unless you bought bottled water or made a conscious decision to, never drink your tap water.
The recent Iowa study, funded by the National Institutes of Health and Centers for Disease Control, is the largest study ever done in the U.S. to measure the amount of fluoride children ingest. From this study, we know that children are being massively overdosed with fluoride. The study documented that 100% of infants who are fed formula made with fluoridated tap water receive more than the recommended dose of fluoride, with some infants receiving 100 times this level. 30% of 1-year-old children and 47% of 2- and 3-year-olds ingest more than the recommended dose of fluoride on a daily basis. The Iowa study verifies that it is impossible to regulate fluoride dosage through the public water supply. And it shows beyond doubt that excessive amounts of a known neurotoxin are being given to our children every single day. The accuracy of this study is borne out in your own children's teeth. According to the CDC's latest data, 41% of children in the U.S. have dental fluorosis. African American children are disproportionately affected, with 58% having dental fluorosis, as compared to only 36% of Caucasian children. Dental fluorosis is a white or brown mottling in the enamel of our permanent teeth, and it is outward proof of excessive fluoride ingestion during tooth development.
It's an important marker because it tells us that we are overdosing our children with a drug that has significant toxic side effects.
And just in the age group of 12 to 15 years old, nearly 22 million children have dental fluorosis in the United States. Bill Moss, former head of the oral division of the CDC and current spokesperson for the Campaign for Dental Health, frequently refers to fluorosis as simply cosmetic, perhaps even attractive.
It's important to understand that community water fluoridation is effective. Approximately 25% reduction in tooth decay. It's safe. On that, I'm not going to give you any percentage because it is absolutely safe.
Would you expect the incidence of fluorosis to increase in our community?
Yes. Yes, I would expect you would have more children with white flecks on their teeth. I would expect that when you looked at those children, you would think that their teeth were very attractive. I think you would find your children would have less tooth decay. I don't think people will complain about having more children have very mild fluorosis.
There seems to be a huge institutional reluctance to accept that we live in a different world now, and that we know a great deal more about fluoride and its risks now than the world of 1950.
A landmark study from Harvard just out in 2015 shows that dental fluorosis in a child correlates directly with a lower IQ. Their results showed that moderate and severe fluorosis was significantly associated with deficits in digit span scores. Similar to mercury, lead, and flame retardants, fluoride exposure impacts a child's short-term and working memory. Of great importance to all of us, in their study, the lowest fluoride concentration in well water was 1 milligram per liter, a level that is within the current DHHS recommended level of fluoride in drinking water, our drinking water. The greater the fluoride exposure, the more severe the dental fluorosis, the greater the number of IQ points lost.
It makes absolutely no sense to expose our child to yet one more developmental neurotoxin. And I think any mother, if you ask them, would you want your child exposed to any amount of lead or any amount of mercury? The mother would say, absolutely not. But yet we give fluoride to our children every day, knowingly and intentionally. That makes no medical sense. It makes no ethical sense.
I don't care whether you're a grandparent, a parent, an uncle, an aunt, a brother. We've got to all see it from our perspective to protect not the next generation, the now generation.
So we're overexposing.
We're overexposing most of the population, most of our children.
In the name of
Better teeth, half a cavity per child.
Are we willing to risk our children's brain and thyroid health for one less cavity at best? That just doesn't make any sense. We only get one chance to develop a brain, and it's a precious moment of life that we should protect and nurture in every way we can.
This moment will never come again. I know it because it has never been before. I listen to the rain outside the door. 1,000 voices singing songs that ain't been sung before.
Fluoridation began so long ago that many people dismiss it as a non-issue, but that's exactly why we should question and re-examine it. This was the same time period when Valium was prescribed to housewives. Feet were x-rayed for shoe size. Cigarettes were harmless, and nuclear testing was exciting to watch. We knew less and understood the world differently.
Here we are now, soon it will be there. Here we are now, soon it will be there. Here we are now.
The March 2015 cover story of National Geographic, entitled "The War on Science," puts people who question fluoridation together with climate change deniers and those who believe the moon landing was faked. Author Joel Achenbach labels people opposed to fluoride as crazy conspiracy theorists, referencing this scene from the 1960s film Dr. Strangelove, as if it provides proof for his dismissal of the issue.
Do you realize that fluoridation is the most monstrously conceived and dangerous communist plot we have ever had to face?
Achenbach clings to the old dogma on fluoridation, using outdated science to uphold the status quo and silence dissenting voices. That, in fact, is the real war on science and humanity. But there is wisdom in Achenbach's own words. Science tells us the truth rather than what we'd like the truth to be. In science, it's not a sin to change your mind when the evidence demands it. Maybe if we keep searching, keep listening, keep growing with the dynamism of science and quest for truth, ending fluoridation will be one of the greatest public health achievements of the 21st century. If that is the case, and what is truly best for our society, for our children, will we have the courage to admit wrong and change our ways? I believe we will, but not without a fight.
there's so much that we could talk about fluoride or comments about the video or anything that you have. So if you have questions, yes.
Has the city council seen this?
We showed them parts of it, but and we gave it to them. Whether they sat down and watched the whole thing, I don't know.
So let me make a comment about where people can get this. So I videotape all the council meetings, and the video was sent to them, and it's up on the internet for you to tell your friends about. So the cards are over here where you can direct them to YouTube and where they can see this. Tonight's video will be there also. So Dr. Osmund's talk at PABA is already up online, so you can see that. It was an excellent talk with those questions he talked about before. So be sure to share that. It's just a link.
The city council's generally aware and have been told most of these facts. You know, they've been told a number of times.
But you know, it took me several years of listening to this stuff before finally I was able to start to change and to actually speak up. It's a huge issue. There's lots of areas, and there's so many different excuses in my mind that could give me of not accepting it. One of them is, well, fluoride can't be that bad. I mean, it's causing so many different problems. I mean, if it was causing one problem, yes, like dental fluorosis. Well, the Center for Disease Control says dental fluorosis is a sign that the child got too much fluoride. The Center for Disease Control. They got too much fluoride while that tooth was developing below the skin. It's a sign of too much dental fluorosis. Now, an interesting thing you may not know is that dental fluorosis went up to about 81, 82% of the population, about mid-80s. That's just too high, too high. So what they did is they redefined dental fluorosis. Now it's not just one tooth, but you have to have two teeth in order to have dental fluorosis. So if one tooth has dental fluorosis, we don't count that anymore, because that was just showing too much fluoride of dental fluorosis, too much damage, and we've got to, I mean, it's terrible. So they redefined the disease. We go with the new definition, but it's really about twice what is shown here. A sign that people have gotten too much fluoride. That should be enough for us to lower it. Oh, they did, from about 1 part per million down to 0.7. That's not nearly enough. It's still way too high. There was another question here.
All right. City, other levels of government, they're required to give us safe drinking water. What are the laws? I believe there's laws that prohibit them from mass medicating the public. Even if you take a fluoride with the most wonderful thing since peanut butter, isn't it illegal for them to even be doing it?
Yes. I mean, every single law that of any organization that you have, it's against the law. It's against the Safe Drinking Water Act, very clearly. It's against the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, very clearly. It's against ethics. There's no, before you and I would do some research, we have to take our research project and take it to a human research ethics board. Most of them are at the universities. And that ethics board has to approve our research, saying that yes, it's ethical. Why? Because where that really started out the most is when the Public Health Service was recommending fluoridation. At the same time they were doing fluoridation here, they were also doing what was called the Tuskegee research. Some of you may have heard about that. Okay, what that was is they had a group of black men that got syphilis. And so they wanted to follow the whole program of how these men would do for syphilis over their lives. And it wasn't long after they started the program that they got penicillin that could treat the syphilis. But the Public Health Service didn't want to stop the research. So these men would come in and get their blood drawn, and they'd get meals, and the doctor would see them, and they would be, they thought, being treated. About 1978 or something like that, this was blown open by a reporter. And what they did is they had followed these families, because it was the husband. Did the husband infect the wife? Did the children get infected? Did the grandchildren get infected? how far did this go? How interesting this research was to find out how totally unethical. In fact, if you look at it more, they actually, Public Health Service helped support some in South America where they actually had the men have sex with prostitutes who were known to have syphilis just to see how easily it was transmitted from one to the next. So, I mean, that's the kind of thing that Hitler did, and we had the Nuremberg trials for. It's wrong. So your question of, are there laws? Yes, absolutely. So what did I do? I contacted the FDA, and I said, here's this, it's an unapproved drug. So is it a drug and is it unapproved? And they said, yes, it's an unapproved drug, and we are deferring regulatory action.
If they already have laws, why is the city even allowed to put it in there? Can we not stop them from basically committing a criminal act and that's medicating everybody?
Federal law is against it. State law has a state law that says that fluoridation is accepted.
Doesn't federal law trump state law?
Supposed to. Federal law does. The problem is you're going to have to go to court. Because nobody's doing anything. Right now, I have a letter from the EPA that says the FDA is responsible. And I have a letter from the FDA that says that the EPA is responsible. And so we're going, well, who is responsible for this whole thing of determining the safety and efficacy? No federal agency is accepting jurisdiction. That's why I keep on pushing. Who's responsible? Who's responsible? Who has jurisdiction? Who says, yep, that's our department? No one at the federal level. What about the state level? They refer to the federal level. What does the city do? They rely on the state. State relies on the federal, and the federal says it's not us.
At the risk of sounding like a rabble-rouser here, I'll make one more comment or maybe a suggestion. If the feds won't do anything, the state won't do anything, and the city already has proven they won't listen to us about our rates, what if everybody, if we start a campaign that the day that they decide to renew that fluoride contract, everybody says, we're not paying our water bill. Just put the money aside, so that once they turn it off, we'll go ahead and get caught up on our water bill. What if we have a mass protest like they used to do in the 60s when there was things going on?
Or a class action suit.
I think it could be a class action suit.
Just,
Dr. Eloise has already done the suit. She's already gone up to court, and we got fined because for harassment.
Well, but it wasn't over that issue specifically.
But she has gone that far.
Right. We've gone, but it was over one issue of whether the city had the right to not have it go to a vote.
Oh, no, that's different.
That was one.
We had more than one trip to court.
Right.
More than one time. The first go-around, I talked down on the right to vote on a technicality, and it was a 5-4 decision.
Right.
The second time, we challenged whether fluoride was a drug.
Yes.
And we applied just the laws you're talking about. And what we got told was that the issue had been decided in 1954 by also a 5-4 vote. And when we got up as far as the appeals court, the Supreme Court, the present Supreme Court, refused to hear it. Not only did they refuse to hear it, they hit us with the cost to bring the suit before the Supreme Court. So we had to pay over $9,000 simply for asking for a review.
Did you hear that?
all right, so the only way to stop them when everybody's doing something illegal is take it to court. If you don't have enough money, what's left?
No, taking it to court is useless.
She took her to court and got fined for taking it.
I talked to David Kennedy, who is a third-generation dentist who's been fighting this for decades, and he says every single case that's gone to court, we have the same thing that she's experienced. They just kick it out and say, you know, this is not our jurisdiction, sorry.
This isn't federal, but we haven't stopped on the courts yet. Okay, but it's, I think the big issue in the federal level, and we haven't really worked at the federal level, is to get, unless the FDA can accept jurisdiction, is to get a judge to decide who is responsible for it. That's the first thing, because you can't just blanket sue the whole federal government. You got to find out who is supposed to be responsible. Then you can hit them harder. But the courts are, you know, it can last for 10 and 20 and 30 years, so it's a very slow process. We've got 200 cities in the last 5 years that have stopped fluoridation in the United States. And I mean, there's no question we can stop it here, but it's going to take a lot of work. I mean, it's going to take a lot of work.
There's no reason why the, I'm sorry.
I just wondered, what do you think it is about people that can't understand something so simple that Hitler not only put it in the prison camps, he put it in one section of people that he found undesirable, and Russia put it in their prison camps, even if that's all we knew. What is it about people's logic, except maybe they're drinking the Fluoride and they've lost that they can't say, oh, right, prison camp, dumb them down, make them docile. He didn't put it in to fix their teeth. Why can't people take history? That's a big thing in history. Hitler was a big thing.
Yep. That is an interesting point, and I don't ever bring that up. Why? Because we don't have any proof of that. You can't find proof that that actually happened.
Some are still alive.
When I was in Europe going to school, that's what the Europeans told me. Okay? But when we've tried to find actual evidence of it, we can't find it.
Okay.
So what it does is, a lot of times people will say, here's what this person believes, and this is what they really should be believing. This is facts over here, and this is what they believe. I want to move this person from this position over here to accept the facts. How do I do that? And sometimes what I do, which is wrong, is I will scream a little bit louder over here saying, it's terrible! And they go like this, oh, it's not that bad. And so we push them further away. So we have to be as careful as we can to be as factual as possible. Stuff we have information for, rather than I think you're right, but I'm not going to say
There's no proof, then it's going to be sensationalized.
Yeah, we contacted the Jewish, whatever it is, and they should have information on it, and they don't. So I just try to go silent on that whole issue because we just don't have the evidence for
That
it.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I think what we all need to do is the old adage, think globally and act locally. So initially our method here is to let's deal with the task at hand, and that is get the city council to agree once they see a resounding vote that this community doesn't want it, that we get it out of our water supply. But that doesn't mean we quit. What I suggest from there on out is two things. Share this short video with everybody you know and care about everywhere around the country, and just say, look, I think this is a critically important thing. I'm asking you one thing, not to read a stupid joke or hear a stupid story. Spend 20 minutes of your life on something that may save your unborn child. And just watch this video. Don't tell them, I think this is horrible. Don't tell them anything. Just say, from one friend to another, family member to another, I want you to watch this video for me and promise me you'll do so. And then let this start to percolate within them. The second thing is, and I've found even people who are strongly in favor of fluoride, it comes back to the individual freedom of choice in our country and what this country is based upon, and that is I am free to choose what I put in my body, what I do to my body. It doesn't impact anybody else. And I straight up asked them, and I'll read you guys here in a few minutes my letter to the editor, and that is, should any other person on this planet choose for you or your family what you put in your body? And there's, in all other circumstances other than this one, anybody will agree with you. Republican, Democrat, left, right, fluoride, pro-fluoride, anti-fluoride, they will say no. Nobody should tell me or my family what we're putting in our bodies. So if we just remain steadfast, but low-key, factual, and diligent in sharing our belief, I think, at least at the very least in our lifetimes, we'll get fluoride out of our country. But to try to pursue it legally, like Bill said, and Dr. Osmunson said, and Dr. Clallam has pursued, legally right now it's not feasible for us. If we get somebody like Erin Brockovich who is opposed to it, who maybe down the line she gets somebody with millions of dollars who agrees with us, says we're going to take this to court and fight it, it may take millions of dollars to get it to the federal level.
Yeah, the other thing is, I think we're better off with a class action suit. A lot of
Yeah.
lawyers are looking at that, and
Yeah.
they feel like that may be a better route to go. But the courts don't like to do suits against ourselves. I mean, who are we gonna sue? Us. We're the ratepayers, and so they're gonna sue the ratepayers? I mean, it doesn't make sense. So this is a tough thing. Back to science, just real quick. In putting this together for the National Toxicology Program on cancer, one of the things I found that I had never heard before is that researchers who want to test cancer drugs, where do they find those cancer animals? Huh? Where do they find them? Guess what? They give the animals fluoride to cause them cancer so that they can try and test their drugs on it. And I'm going, what? And we're wondering whether fluoride causes cancer or not? I mean, this is crazy. We cause cancer in animals in order to test our new drug therapies. It's not a fact that it's whether it causes it, it does. Anyway, any other questions here? Yeah.
I just have, someone addressed a question to me. How did SWIM do it? How did they prevent it?
Their city council voted against it.
Do you know why?
No.
Okay, I would love to answer that question. Eloise and a handful of us went door to door, and we got to say that we could reach a vote, which has happened here. They also said we won't necessarily agree to the vote, and so the vote was against it, and they still were going to go for fluoride because there was who was Schultz, whoever the mayor was at the time.
Oh, yeah.
He was so pro fluoride, and huh?
Yeah,
Schubert.
Schubert.
And I dared to look him in the eye and say, "Now, why are you so pro fluoride, Walt?" And his eyes rolled around in his head, and then he said, "Well, because Tom Locke is. That's the only reason he could come up with it."
Because what?
I met with Tom Locke for 2 hours. It was really nice to meet with me. We had lunch, and we just kind of had a huge notebook and went through all the facts and figures that you guys have now heard a million times. And I said, "Okay, what do you think, Tom?" And he said, "I think that all those people that did all those studies all over the world were trying to make a name for themselves." That was his response to me.
There's such a strong
Well, he
belief.
belongs to the, now I kept going, this last 10 years I'm going, why is Tom so attached to teeth? Why, he's a medical doctor. I mean, maybe a dentist, which still is unreasonable, but why is he supposed to be taking care of all the people, all of their bodies? And then I just finally found out he's part of this dental association. Who knows
He
what that's
needs money to do it.
Yeah.
So here, I have a master's in public
Oh,
health.
anyway, I just want to finish that. So anyway, he influenced the one turning vote. She was very irate, and she kind of said, "Well, I don't want to make this vote. I think fluoride's really good, but Tom told me to change the vote because I don't know why." Apparently, that was what, So something happened there momentarily. At least that's what I understand. That's the way I remember it. I could be wrong, but she was the turning vote, and she was very much of a snippet, and she was very much not really happy about turning the vote, but she did. So it was very close.
She didn't like being pressured, so let it know.
Huh?
Did I hear that right? She did not like being pressured to say yes, so she voted no.
No, that's not what you heard. But you heard it. It's not, she wanted to vote yes. She wanted to go for the fluoride, but she was pressured to go against it.
Okay, let me explain a little bit something about public health. I have a master's in public health, 2 years in public health. It was about a week to 2 weeks before graduation when I was going to get my diploma. That's what I'd gone to school for many years, college and then master's. And I was sitting in a class, and the instructor said, "You're going to be going on out and working for public health departments and different organizations in public health. I want you to remember that it is your job to promote what you're told to promote. It's not your job to look at the science and determine the science. You're to promote the policy." That's not me, as you can tell. So I raised my hand and I said, "So what if my employer tells me to promote tobacco smoking?" And I remember the teacher went, and the other students who looked over at me and went, "Bill again." And the teacher said, I want you to promote tobacco, but not to the best of your ability. So here's an analogy that I use for public health. If you were to go to the auto dealer and you talk to the salesman, and you say to the salesman, I think they use a little too much nickel in the bearings of their engines. He'd look at you and say, this is one of the best-selling cars we have. And you say, but tell me more about the nickel in there. He'd say, well, if he's a good salesman, he'd say, I have no idea about the engineering of this thing. That's not my job. Contact Subaru about the engineering, not me. I'm the salesman. And that's the same thing in healthcare. Who's the salesman for the healthcare? That's public health. Don't ask them anything about science. Don't expect them to know anything about science. That's why when in dentistry I said, nuts this stuff of public health, because they have no idea in their minds what they're doing. They'll talk about how if you're going to have a meeting, you'll have a doctor that comes in and you get the projector and you get the chairs and you're all arranged for the meeting hall, and then you have the doc and maybe make posters and advertisements for it, and then you have the doctor speak. And if the doctor says things that you don't like or anything, that's just fine. Shh, don't say anything. That's not your job, the science. So if you're going to go and find something about science, don't go to Dr. Locke. He's public health. Don't go to your public health department. They aren't going to look at science. They're going to talk to you and tell you information, the best science that they've been told because of policy. Now, to try to change policy is going to be very difficult. Like lead, it's going to take generations. Meanwhile, not generations, decades. But meanwhile, you have to decide what you're going to do for yourself. And it can be a real problem. Some subsets of the population are extremely sensitive to chemicals. I have a friend in Renton, and she has a son who's about 25, he's autistic. She said, I kept a diary, specific diary of every single day of my daughter's life. When my son was born, I kept a diary every single day. When I got to a point where I saw that my son was having serious problems with emotional problems of whatever it was, I looked back in my diary to find out when I first noticed that he was having these kinds of problems. It was very clear when it happened. She said, I know when it was. And he's very chemically sensitive. One of the things is fluoride. So when he takes she said, he's autistic. There's no question about it. He is sensitive to many different chemicals. But one of them, a friend of mine said, well, try using bottled water instead of tap water. She said, when I started using the bottled water for him to drink and cooking with and everything, I noticed a relief of him, because he would walk up and down the halls at night at home screaming. He's well over 250 pounds, 6 foot, really big, strong guy. And she is about your size, okay? Petite, shorter. I mean, she's got this huge, huge son who's just going ballistics on her at night, all night long. And she said, but when I got him onto the tap water, onto bottled water, his reactions were less. But he was still autistic. Then somebody said to me, well, what are you doing about his bath water? Well, what about his bath water? Well, don't you think it absorbs in his skin? So what she did is she got bottled water, she heated it on the stove, and she put it in the bath and gave him a bath. Well, he had gotten a part-time job at a school doing a little bit of photocopy or some other things, or taking stuff around to different rooms. And when he took a bath at night, he just screamed all night, but in the morning he was tending to do a little bit better and he could go to work. So she thought, well, maybe he can sleep better if I give him the bath in the morning. So she gave him the bath in the morning. He couldn't go to work. So there's something about his bath, she said. So she started heating this water up, bottled water. And she said he would sleep at night much better, and he would go to work much better. He was so sensitive to the chemicals. So some of us are more sensitive than others. And Are you or are you not? This can be extremely difficult to sense. Another thing, one other thing that we really need to do, and Jim, I want you to come on up and start after my little talk here. In school, they gave us a study where they'd taken 300 mice. 100 mice, they gave enough of one toxin, I think it was arsenic, until that mouse died. First mouse. They had 100 mice, and the first mouse died, and they called it the lethal dose 1. Then they got another 100 mice, and they gave them enough, I think it was lead or something else, until the first mouse died. That was lethal level 1 for that. Then what they did is they gave the third 100 mice the lethal dose of the arsenic and the lethal dose of the lead, and how many together? And how many of those mice do you think died?
All of them.
All of them. So what we have is, if we are getting a toxin of one kind, and then another kind of toxin, and then we get another toxin, that builds up and more and more and more. Both of them weigh down on us. So the fewer toxins we can have, the better off we are. It's just a simple thing. And I know you all know that. But it really is a scientific known fact. We've got to reduce our toxins. Okay.
I had a businessman in town suggest that the city require the dentists in town, if they really believe in fluoride the way they say they do, that they would put up a risk insurance policy for people who might be toxic to the fluoride, and therefore there would be a pool of money to help take care of them. I thought that was a kind of an interesting idea we might throw out to city council.
I'm sure they're just rushing to line up and sign up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If they're
the
make
big
them pay
problem
for
is
it. They
you have to
believe it.
prove that you've been harmed
Right.
from the fluoride, and that's really quite difficult to do. That it wasn't one of the other chemicals. But yeah, I think the theory of it is good. I think it's a distraction, but I think it's a good theory. One other question. Jim, you want to come on up?
Yeah, just real quick on the harm, and this is important, that 40% statistic comes from the National Center for Health Statistics, that 40% of American teenagers have visible signs of dental fluorosis.
12 to 15. Yeah.
That's harm. Now, the medical professionals say it's not that much harm, but that's harm. It's visible proof. It's tissue damage. It's a deformity. And about 1 in 4%, or excuse me, about 4% or 1 in 25, according to the same study, have severe dental fluorosis. So
I think it's 2%.
Well, depending on what you mean by severe.
Right. Moderate.
But 4% is in need of treatment.
Even if it's one person.
Which I would call severe deformity. If you're harming someone to the point where they need some sort of, treatment, it's beyond, that's severe. If it's a kid, that's severe. I mean, you break a kid's arm, that's severe, right? You bust up and it's damage to the tissue itself. It's no different than, not much different than a cancer or any other deformity. And as we saw in the last city council meeting, larger exposures to fluoride cause severe deformity. So, people can't walk and stuff like that. So, if you're asked, is it really hurting anybody? All these IQ studies and stuff, they're all dubious, but what's a fact, according to the CDC, well, it's according to the National Center for Health Statistics, published on the CDC website, 40% of American children have visible tissue deformity, and about 1 in 25 have it so badly that it affects their quality of life tangibly.
Okay. And I understand what you're saying there. I would like to qualify it just a little bit as a dentist. That I would much rather have dental fluorosis, if that were the only problem of fluoride, than cancer. I'd much rather have dental fluorosis than most other things because I can fix dental fluorosis. I can fix dental decay. I just can't fix brains, and I can't fix cancer and some of those other things. So I think your point is well taken, because dental fluorosis is harm, but it's a sign that that fluoride went throughout our whole body. I mean, it was, you can't sit there and say that it was too much for just the teeth and it wasn't too much for the rest of the body. Of course it was too much for the rest of the body. Anyway.
I want to share a little thing that I was talking to Dr. Eloise about earlier. My friend has her grandson living just right out of Seattle. And the trick or treat, they had the 3 children went around and they come back in and they had all had a bag of candy. And so the parents said you can pick for 5 days only and the rest of it we're going to get rid of. So they give them 5 days. Guess who bought the candy? The dentist office bought all of the 6 pounds of candy that was left. And what are they going to do with that? Probably pass it out and give it to their clients as they
When you come in and
I
have a
don't
good
think so.
checkup.
A lot of, they may give it as gifts to the other dentists instead. and there are quite a few dentists who will buy trick-or-treat candy by the pound.
Yeah, that's what they were doing, yeah.
Yeah. And that's a thing, and a lot of them will just destroy it because you can't eat all the candy. It's just crazy. And it's probably more harmful than one of the reasons that we have fluoridation, of course, is the sugar industry wanted to promote something to try to counteract the effects of the sugar on the tooth decay. So the dentist said, well, promote fluoridation. Yeah. Anyway, what can we do? Because what's really important is that we stop it in Port Angeles. I mean, that's a key. It's a doable thing. It's in our hands. It's our opportunity now. It's going to be a lot easier to do it now than it is in 1 year after they sign another contract. So now is our moment in time to work on this.
They don't have to sign another contract.
Pardon?
They do not have to sign another contract.
Oh, I know, but it's going to be easier to get them now than it will be in a year after they say we've had it up to here. So we need to stop it now. It's really the moment in time. Doesn't mean we can't do it later, but we need to do it now.
We have 3 weeks.
Yes.
Yes. So the ballots, my name's Jim Bourget, by the way, for those of you who don't know me, although most of you do. Trouble with a capital T, but in this case, I'm good trouble. Anyway, what I would suggest, as Eloise mentioned, we've got about 3 weeks. The ballots went out yesterday, so people will start receiving them probably Monday, Tuesday. From what I read in the paper, you have to put it in the envelope that is supplied with it. It's postage paid, self-addressed. So what I would encourage all of you to do, to whatever level you feel comfortable, you have time, you have energy, do something to help educate those who are uninformed at this point in time. There's a lot of people who still don't know anything about fluoride, although because we've been pushing it so hard, many more of them do know. Call your friends, share the link to this video, ask them, what do you know about fluoride? What do you think about fluoride? And if they go, I don't know, well, I've got some rack cards over there you can take with you that give some brief comments about fluoride, websites you can go to further inform. I myself have been going out on the highway at rush hour, morning and evening, where it's something I would have never done in the past, and I started thinking about it. You know, embarrassment or getting harassed by people or whatever the case may be, your friends saying, have you lost your mind or whatever. And I started thinking about an old slogan, courage of your convictions. And at my age and how strongly I believe about this, I thought, I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm going to try to cause as much influence as I can. I have had thousands of cars pass me every day, and almost exclusively the only reaction I'm getting is this, and taps on the horns and waving at me. I have had nobody say anything negative, not one person. Now, I've seen other people out there with signs too, and I've been encouraging others to get out on the highway, Rebecca being one of them. Any kind of sign. Write letters to the editor. If you don't mind, I'm going to read the one of mine that was just published in the Friday, Saturday edition. And the title is No Fluoridation. I'm urging a no vote on water fluoridation. I don't want someone else determining what I'll put in my body. Would you like me or others to determine what you and your loved ones put in your body? Putting a medication into our water supply goes against everything our country is based upon, individual freedom of choice. Ask yourself this: do I want someone putting chemicals in my water? The only thing that should be put into our water should be to keep it safe, such as chlorine. What if the government decides it wants to put other chemicals in our water? Does medicating an entire community through the water supply make sense? I think not. Medicating others without individual consent is immoral and unethical. There's a great deal of scientific research that indicates many dangers from ingesting fluoride. Water is the essence of life. It should be pure and natural. Please do your own research and make an informed decision. The risk and dangers are too great. Watch for your city water fluoridation survey mailed out today from the Clallam County Public Utility District, and tell your friends to vote no fluoride. Keep our water pure and safe. You can write anything. Thank you. You can write anything at all. You can go online to letters to the editor. You can call them up and just put whatever comes to your heart as to, I don't want to be medicated, I don't want to drink a toxic chemical, I don't want fluoride in the water, whatever the case may be. If each and every one of you would write a letter starting tomorrow, they're going to be forced to publish them over the next 3 weeks. We've got 3 weeks of voting. If you have the courage, put a sign in your car, put a sign on your property, hand out literature to your friends. We've got only 9 or 10,000 people are getting these ballots, not the 20,000 of the city, so we need to make an impact. Crystal's been waiting for a while. Go ahead, Crystal.
A couple things. I talked to somebody who was involved in the Portland thing, and it went down in Portland, in Florida, and he said the whole push was that it wasn't legal, that it was, you know, not against human rights. They didn't even have any of the science or anything.
Yeah.
They just kept saying it's against our rights, it's against our rights. So that's a powerful push. I also wanted to say, on the other hand, I have a 30-point paper here of all the things that I've come up with that I think are horrifying. If anybody wants a copy, it's not really completed yet. Also, if you want to give me your email, I'll give it to you in a completed form, and then you can email it out to other people. I think it's pretty good. And my dear friend Judy is here, and she has highway front, right? You want to talk about it?
Highway frontage, right across the street from Les Schwab.
Awesome.
And we have something big we want to put up.
Is that the landscaping place?
The landscaping place that Ryan Murphy runs, yes.
And
I've talked to him, and he said he'd love to have signs there. Great.
Well, we've got a number of signs made already. We
could
get a big one, and then also just put a bunch of them, like the political signs, all in a row. No fluoride. Everybody that's leaving PA in the morning to go elsewhere to work, they're going to see it. That's awesome.
Yeah. I also have property behind Les Schwab where we run a barn sale swap meet that some of you may have been to. And we'll put up signs there too.
Okay.
On the fence.
Question here. Who's going to work on those signs? I want to, by work, we need to make sure that we get the signs made and that we get them up. Somebody may want to say, I'll put them up. Somebody else may say, I'm going to help make them. Somebody else say, okay, I'm going to help pay for them. And somebody else can say, I'm going to, I don't know, let's divide this on up. But I think that's a big key, because just driving in now from, I wasn't all the way to Spring, but I was coming this way, and I saw 3 nice signs, vote no fluoridation. I mean, it just caught me all the way along. Now, there may be more. Beth and I went to see a movie. And at the theater, while they were promoting the wonders of fluoride, how it was wonderful on the theater. So there's opposition out there. But I think it was easier to see on the roadside, far more people, because we got there early, we sat there with all that junk that goes before the movie, and in there was a little blip. They paid a lot of money to have that little blip. Here we have an opportunity for just a little bit of time, put up some signs in a very prominent place. Lots of people are going to see it, so who's going to do it?
I'll get in touch with you through Crystal, and then...
Well, do it right now. You guys can...
Okay.
We can slow it down.
We're going to have water or something.
I'll get some more signs made, but the issue is they have to be waterproof as well, because it's going to be raining at least the next week.
So
they make those nice little political vote for me signs that are on wire.
Yes, exactly.
Stick in their yards. I'd like to see heavier duty, like you're talking about on the highway, but I don't know how much those little
Well, you
wire
can get,
signs cost.
you can get those wire ones blank for like $5. And then
Okay.
I've been getting laminated ones that fit those to a degree.
Where do we get those little ones, do you know?
You can get the little wire ones, you can get them at Swain's and Walmart, and you go in the, where they have signs, house for sale and all that stuff.
Yeah,
typically.
I think it'd be wonderful if people.
And then I can go out to Office Depot where I got some made that are laminated. They're about 11 by 18 or 20. And you just do bright red, large block letters. And that's what I've been using out on the highway. You can see them.
As I've been calling folks and people have been just saying that they're gonna do it, you know. But anyway, also I've been asking to aim it towards spots, because I think the radio spots are really important, and I've written a whole slew of them, and I'm gonna go in on Monday and do a bunch more. I did a couple, and I'm trying to raise my own funds to get them out there, so.
So let me update everybody at where we are on the radio spots. We've paid for 60. They've paid for 5 times now. So, you know, 5 times the opposition is done. So they cost $15 each ad. So if anybody can throw $15 into the pot, more we can do, more we can do. We've pretty much emptied the kitty with that. So.
Yeah, but tell them how many ads.
Yeah.
60 ads.
And tell them where they can send the money if they want to donate.
So yesforcleanwater.org.
And all the information's there. You can either send a check or, and I tested it out today, you can do MasterCard or PayPal on it.
So what's the address? What's the address again?
Yes.
It's Post Office Box, PPF, Post Office Box.
2418.
2418, Post Office Box.
No, 16.
1677.
1677, or on the internet at
Yes for Clean Water.
yes, and it's a 4,
Yeah, it's
number 4, clean water. Yes for clean
Yeah,
water.
if you send it to PPF, just make sure you put down there that it's used for clean water, so I know that it's
I'm
going to
willing
a
to let everybody else know
section.
where it's at.
So a couple other things.
I need the address one more time, sorry.
How much money? Well, I'll do a few myself. I've already made it
1677.
done.
I'd be happy to. We live on
P.O.
10th
Box
and Peabody.
1677.
So all you have
That goes
to
to
do,
PPF.
all you have to do is
10th
stop.
and Peabody, just right down there.
Stop at KOMP. Let Stan know that you would like to record, because I think the different voices bring different passion. So just stop, record. It takes maybe 5 minutes. My son did it last week. So it's easy to do. And they take out all the pauses if you goof. They help you redo it. It's simple, simple, simple. So there are at least 20 there, and if you've got more, leave yours, or write one, okay? Question?
What about some free advertising on the country store and on Free Plug Friday and?
Anybody call in, you can absolutely do that. So this is all social marketing, guys. You've heard the term for a long time. Everybody on your internet list that lives in PA, if you've got a Facebook account, just take these things that anywhere, put the links up, they fill in, send it. Please, friends, listen to this. We need to change what's going on here. And you don't do it once, you do it almost every day. So they'll get mad at you. So what? Just do it, because you're asking them to share it with their people. We put on, Ryan, sit down.
You can put it on Twitter if you have tweets.
Oh my God, you.
See?
Okay,
That's
it's fantastic. On the
That's
back,
your job, Ryan.
on the back, we have a bunch of these stickers. Now, I would say don't stick them on your clothes. Use a pin so you can reuse them and reuse them. But there's a bunch. Take what you think you can pass out. Eloise made a bunch of red cards for the red sign for your cards. There's tape here. Put 2 pieces on your hand tonight, grab some signs and put them on the left and right side of your car.
This gentleman had something to say.
And I'm seeing these downtown now.
Sure.
So they are getting around, but we need to do more.
Is there any way we could get those on white paper, because it would be a lot easier to
Go ahead.
from far away?
Actually, the red, automatically people are going, no, stop.
Okay, well, we can't read it.
This gentleman has a question.
My question is, who will be counting the votes? I'm a little worried.
Oh, it's very-
I can help with that.
Go ahead, Judy.
I can
We
answer
got it
that.
covered.
I've been talking to, back and forth with the city and Patty Rosen, who is in charge of the ballot. Okay, all the ballots will be collected on the 27th. when you mail it in, it goes right to a box. It's locked, a locked box. They'll collect them on the 27th is a deadline. December 7th is the counting. And it's done downstairs in the basement where the election voting counting is.
This is what call.
And I will be I'll be observing. I'm certified to observe because I just did this at the last election. And it will start at 10 o'clock. It's going to run for 3 days. Patty says 3 days.
There should be somebody doing all those 3 days.
Yeah.
100% of the time.
I think that each one from both sides, pros and cons, gets one person. And I'll be the one.
And Patty Roseanne.
They should be unattended for a second. I don't trust
No, they're
them.
not. They won't be. It starts at 9 and 9 or 10, but I'll be informed what time to be there. And it's under lock and key. That's the way the voting's done right now. It's we're really good here with Mono County.
If you need volunteers for that, let me know, because this is the way how they're gonna cheat, how they're gonna swing it. They're gonna cheat, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, well, I don't think they can, because like, they weren't gonna have observers, now they are. And, you know, they had to go, the city told me when I was questioning them, they have to see what the protocol is for observers to observe, and I said, wait a minute here.
I wouldn't be surprised there will be more pro-vote, pro-fluoride than there's more citizens in the city of Port Angeles.
Well, in a normal election, they only allow 2 people from each side in the room to watch. You have a line that you have to stay behind. You have to be certified, like Judy said. Now, Patty Roseanne is the ex-auditor. She's the one who retired last year. Shuna Riggs is now the auditor. So she's a good qualified person to do this count. I think they picked a good person. So it should be good, right?
Yeah, I believe it will be, yeah. And I will be there, so.
I have a comment I'd like to make.
Yes.
We can all be walking billboards by using wearing a tag like
I'm wearing?
You can. I wear mine everywhere I go.
I do too,
and
and a lot of
get
people
all kinds
ask
of
about
comments.
it.
So they're back there.
I've had people say, "Well, I can't vote because I'm renting." Yes, you can tell your landlord.
Should we hand them out?
Yeah, they can get them on their way out. They're back there on the counter.
Better hand them out.
Real quick, I've got a number of these
They
rack
can
cards.
pick the ones they like. There's like 5
Additionally,
kinds.
I've got permission to distribute at Walmart Monday and Tuesday evening from 4:30 to 6:30. Stephanie and Ryan were kind enough to help me yesterday. And we can just hand out these cards that say vote no and fluoride's bad and all that good stuff. If you have some people that come to your swap meet and you want to give them there, I'll give you some of these.
I would be more than happy
Okay, and then
to pass out.
if others of
Everybody I
you
talk to says they're against
have
it.
friends or family, or additionally, if you're going to be involved in any sporting event or musical presentation coming up, anywhere where there's going to be a lot of people, take something. I wear my tag everywhere I go on my coat. It says vote no on fluoride. Yes,
Another thing
Krista?
I recommend is when they give somebody that you know is against fluoride, say, read it and please give it to somebody you think might not know this.
Right, and tell them the ballots are coming out. Tell them the ballots are coming out and you need to vote, and you need to tell everybody you know to vote. That's also what we're doing.
Yeah.
So I have,
Any action you can take over the next 3 weeks.
I have another question. So on Tuesday at the PABA meeting at 7:30 in the morning at Joshua's is the pro-fluoride presentation.
Yeah.
Anybody want to go to breakfast? I text you. Tuesday morning, 7:30.
7:30, go raise
You know,
some
and then
ruckus.
they have a question and answer thing. Now, they always let the members ask questions first, but Judy was there last week. She got to ask a question, a very
Okay.
pointed question, so it was really good. So,
Jesse, here's a good question if you go. Ask those that are promoting fluoride, would you give me the information on a randomized controlled study that's been done with fluoride?
but they're going to put that down.
That is the standard test for any medicine, any drug. You know how many there's been done with fluoride? 0. Not one randomized controlled study.
But that's old news in a way. I think one of the things that would be great is to say, okay, 7 years of safety, what tests have you done to monitor that has been safe? I mean, you know, they keep saying safety, but nothing's been
Well,
done.
because we've all been drinking it, it must be safe. Okay, we've got everybody's phone.
The answer is very simple with it. It's been done many times. Any other questions?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
They
what's going
just
to
kind of
they're going to
ignore it,
gloss over
blow
that.
by
When I said on the radio with Dr. Pollack, what don't you understand about do not swallow? Why is that so complex? He goes, well, that's on lots of bottles and products. I mean, it's just a standard label.
Good. Hey, Edna's got something valuable to share with us. I'm going to leave a bunch of these here. I got to get going because I've been neglecting my family. Eloise had something to say?
Yeah, we caught their hand in the cookie jar. We caught their hand in the cookie jar real good over a claim in their glossy literature, which they have repeatedly said there is a 20% decrease in cavities in non-economically advantaged 3 to 5 year old children in Port Angeles. That we now know is a flat out lie. We know that because we have now unearthed a contract that was written between the...
Face this way so that they can hear.
All right.
You're fine, you're good, just turn, just turn.
You can stay seated, just face this way.
Okay.
Eloise?
The camera, you're going to be a star.
Okay, with good attention to the camera. We found a contract that was written by the Dental Foundation and our State Department of Health. And that contract says that the results of the 2010 SMILE survey will be held secret to the extent that it does not prejudice the interests of the Dental Foundation. Furthermore, if the material in that survey is made public and the Dental Foundation gets sued over it, the state will be responsible for paying the cost of their defense. This is one heck of a contract, and I've got all the words of it.
Do you have?
That contract is now filed through the City of Port Angeles clerk, and it's available on that, and I hope it is also available on the website.
Why don't we get Dale to print it?
Paper won't be out in time.
It's too long to print, but I will go. In Tuesday's paper, which was the earliest I could get, the column, we're going to have close to half a page in the Daily News on Tuesday. And that is going to be this particular ad, which I have handed out, and each one of you will have a copy of what that ad is. So you might see a power going after it. What we have found is that in fact, as a consequence of this contract, the SMILE survey that we printed up for Clallam County has left out all of the identifying information that would let a person judge as to whether a child is better off in fluoridated port as compared to non-fluoridated, at that time, 2005, Port Angeles and Squim. The statistics are verifiable. We got a hold finally of the data disk so we could mine the exact statistics that were used. Each child was given an identifying number, and so we can track them by their age and by various other characteristics of where they live. Having gotten that, we now know that the fluoridated Forks kids have more cavities than the unfluoridated Port Angeles and Squirtland. We know that the numbers of cavities in the Forks kids are higher than the numbers of cavities on average in the mouths of these others. In other words, we got them cold. We got the facts, but now they've got all of this wonderful slick advertising, and we can't manage. We can't match.
We've got some slick advertising too. Can we get that contract in digital form? I can publicize it to quite a few people through the Facebook page that I set up on the website at cleanwaterforclallam.org. There's quite a few people looking at that, and a lot of people looking at the Facebook page. And that's the kind of thing that we're working on. We got a lot of local stuff, so that contract would be really, really useful to publish.
Well, we have it, and
I'd love to
it's
get
on
it.
file And the city automatically takes the exhibits that I give them and scans them, so they will have it digital.
So,
Can you, would you email it to me? I don't.
Yeah, no, you can do it off the webpage.
Of the Cleveland, yes, 14
Public records,
Oh, Clallam
archives,
County.
and you go right into it, the date.
Shouldn't somewhere on here be stated that?
One way or another, we'll make sure you get it.
If you, yeah, if you could, somebody could maybe just get it to me, I'd be happy to post it and get it in front of budget.
Well, I'll put it on,
We
yes,
haven't done
and
a double
it'll be on
hang
Facebook,
not on
yes,
this
for
one.
Okay.
anti-Fluoride.
Not only did we find that there was this difference, that it was absent from the document where it should have been available to the public and wasn't, but the Dental Foundation in 2011 actually misquoted the contents of it in another venue. They wrote something in the Sports News Review on the other side of the water in the Spokane area. And the Department of Health took a great deal of displeasure because the Department of Health came right out and said this was not true, flat out. I've got the email. I don't know how the heck somebody didn't see that it got swept up in the 800 pages that my public disclosure shook loose. But there it was, hiding, and that is the gem. That also is, and it was the same issue now that they're spreading to Port Angeles. They're going after the preschool kids and claiming that there was this benefit. In the case of the benefit that they quoted in the local stuff, they said that there was this 20% improvement in these children. Already fluoridation is helping these poor kids between 2005 and 2010. Well, we also got the data for the Smile Survey of 2005, and what do you know? Not one preschool child was examined in 2005. So we got them both ways. The hand is in the cookie jar. Now the question is, how do we get this out to the ordinary person?
That's right.
We're running late.
Yeah.
The ballot's going out there.
Anybody willing to walk their streets and put them on the mailboxes?
In the rain? I don't think so.
I went close to a half-page ad in the PDN. The earliest I could get it in was Tuesday. The thing cost a bit over $19. I'm hoping that I can get another one in the following Sunday's paper.
By the way, you can get that off of the PDN website, and then you can take that link and share that link of that article out to your network. And you can also make comments to these things online, so do that too.
How do we go about doing that?
I'll get it to you. Just get it in the paper and I'll get it to you.
Okay.
And I wrote a radio spot about that.
I have the proof.
Hang on to your question for just half a second. We're going to be doing
on their
a little
line.
more. I'd like to present what you've got here.
We have a list that Judy sat for hours and compiled this list. These are people who had voted on the original, trying to get the fluoridation taken out from the city, and she's put together their names and their phone numbers, and we need people to call and remind them to fill out their ballot and get them in so that we can get their ballot counted. So anybody volunteering to come make calls? We've got about 25
Can everybody
sheets of
take a
names.
sheet? Yeah, take one
And it's
sheet.
both sides.
So there has to be some accountability to finishing it. In other words, if you take a sheet, you forget about it.
You gotta promise to do it.
Yeah, well, we gotta be accountable.
And you can duplicate calls too, but that's okay.
You just have to call the person and say, remember those two.
But we need a coordinator for that.
So how do you coordinate it?
You keep track of who's got them, and then you call them and make sure they're getting it done.
Well, we're gonna have to get that prepared before we go any further than with this.
Not really, we can just do it as we hand them out.
Everybody,
Just do it as you hand them out. Whoever takes one.
Do you have a master copy of that, Judy?
No.
Oh, my
But
goodness.
Judy does, on her computer. I don't have one here.
Okay, but if you can send it maybe out to all of us, because it doesn't hurt to call people more than, it'd be better to duplicate them than it is to miss people.
But
So-
if people here will take a page, I'll write down their name and number as they're doing it. We'll just say page 1, page 2.
Yeah, because I don't have any of my notepad.
Yeah.
I'll take one page.
Okay, what page is that? A through what?
Just don't call the same person.
Can we name the, let's number the pages. First, let me have it all number the pages.
There are no names, they're just as they come up with the ballot. They're not alphabetical.
Okay.
Okay.
Here you go.
Thank you, everybody.
You want to take about 4 or 5 of those?
Take 4 or 5 of those, will you?
Thank you, Jim. There's another question back here. While we're working, you got that under control? Good.
I just want to echo something that you were sort of saying earlier, and I think that it's really important in all of our public contacts and all the meetings that we go to, that we be very polite and respectful, because we don't want to be labeled as a bunch of kooks,
Extremists, wackos.
extremists, abrasive.
I wholeheartedly
the other
agree
way.
with that, Janet, and I think one positive way to do that is to say, I respect everybody else's opinion. I happen to vigorously disagree with it. Jesse, and my heart's with you, but I'm trying to make the best impression. I'd like to tell them all they're a lot of glittering idiots and they need to stop this stuff, but they're not. I respect their opinion, their profession. I disagree, this is why, and there you go.
We, in Clean Air Now, a few years ago, we took out ITT because of the poisoning here in the area. And what we did is we ran a card file and had a phone line where they could call in and leave comments and be recorded.
I'll take a couple.
That was really effective because when we went up against ITT's lawyers, we had actual physical tracking of everybody that was complaining about how they were affected, whether it be in their wells or whether it be through the
Well,
air.
and that brings to mind a good point that when this vote is counted, and I'm absolutely convinced it's going to be a strong no vote. I'm really convinced of that.
I am too.
We need to have a strong presence with the city council. Oh, one last thing that I forgot to mention. For those of you and your friends who may not get a ballot, but live in the city and are forced to drink this stuff, you can contact the city council members to express your opinion, via email or telephone. We should bury them with emails, that we don't want this stuff. Oh, emails, well, everybody you know that has email capability, have an email, you can go right onto the city council list and just hit them all.
Jim, I don't know if this works, but can you actually state when you send in an email to them that you want it put on public record, that you have sent in? I'm wondering if that might help us a little bit.
I don't know if you can.
I think you can, but you have to go through the clerk or the,
Yeah.
you can't just send it personally to them.
Right,
You can
right.
send it personally, but also send it to the clerk, and then it's a public record, so that if we requested, for freedom of information request, they should have all of that on there.
Yeah, and I always do. I always write out, please, apply this to all the public records. And Jennifer's the only one that can send it and make sure that it's done properly.
Okay.
Otherwise, they just kind of void it out if they get one direct. Ignore it.
City council meetings, next one's the 17th, right?
Have a good evening, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I think there's one after that before the vote's counted.
Okay, we got about 5 minutes or so before we need to be finished. Any other questions, ideas?
I never got an answer on how we help the signs.
I'm just calling you.
Yeah, I mean, do I make signs and mark around town, or, I mean?
Okay.
Jim, question, quick, Jim, this man's got a question.
Email.
Hi, I'm Brian. Yeah, I'd like to
You said that in the last 5 years,
Okay.
260
You could go to any one of the local coffee shops or you can go to
US. Oh, boy, that's a big question.
really fast.
I think it's in the US, but you can look it up on the plan.
Right now, I don't know if we have that.
I could have big
Please.
Real simple.
Make some phone calls. I think one of the powerful things is a phone call. You don't even have to rock rain, you don't have to do like a Jim and standing in the corner. Make a phone call if you're a resident, especially out in Los Angeles. Please vote no for my sake. And that's pretty powerful. I don't want fluoride. Please say no. Don't force me to have fluoride. Very simple. Okay,
Any other points? Well, I'd like to have some sort of a report on the finances, hard finances.
That was exactly